Good evening, my darlings. It is Friday, the 26th of September, 2025. It will soon be Halloween. So let's delve tonight into the first of our classics by Bradbury, The October Game from 1948. Shall we begin? He put the gun back into the bureau drawer and shut the drawer. No, not that way. Louise wouldn't suffer that way. She would be dead, and it would be over, and she wouldn't suffer. It was very important that this thing have, above all, duration. Duration through imagination. How to prolong the suffering. How first of all to bring it about. Well, the man standing before the bedroom mirror carefully fitted his cufflinks together. He paused long enough to hear the children run by swiftly on the street below. Outside this warm two-story house, like so many grey mice, the children, like so many leaves. By the sounds of the children, you knew the calendar day. By their screams, you knew what evening it was. You knew it was very late in the year, October, the last day of October, with white bone masks and cut pumpkins and the smell of drop candle fat. No, things hadn't been right for some time. October didn't help any. If anything, it made things worse. He adjusted his black bow tie. If this were spring, he nodded slowly, quietly, emotionlessly at his image in the mirror. Then there might be a chance. But tonight, all the world was burning down into ruin. There was no green of spring, none of the freshness, none of the promise. There was a soft running in the hall. That's Marion, he told himself, my little one. All 8 years, all 8 quiet years of her. Never a word, just her luminous grey eyes and her wondering little mouth. His daughter had been in and out all evening, trying on various masks, asking him which was the most terrifying, most horrible. They have both finally decided on the skeleton mask. It was just awful. It would scare the beans from people. Again he caught the long look of thought and deliberation he gave himself in the mirror. He had never liked October, ever since he first lay in the autumn leaves before his grandmother's house many years ago, and heard the wind and saw the empty trees. It made him cry without a reason, and a little of that sadness returned each year to him. It always went away with the spring. But it was different tonight. There was a feeling of autumn coming to the last 1,000,000 years. There would be no spring. He had been crying quietly all evening. It did not show, not a vestige of it. On his face, it was all hidden somewhere, and it wouldn't stop. A rich, syrupy smell of candy filled the bustling house. Louise had laid out apples in new skins of caramel, and there were vast bowls of punch, fresh, mixed, stringed apples in each door, scooped vented pumpkins. Peering triangularly from each cold window. There was a water tub in the centre of the living room, waiting with a sack of apples nearby for dunking to begin. All that was needed was the catalyst, the inpouring of children to start the apples bobbing, the stringed apples to penduluming in the crowded doors, and the candy to vanish. The halls to echo with fright or delight. It was all the same. Now the house was silent with preparation, and just a little more than that. Louise had managed to be in every other room today, save the room he was in. It was her very fine way of intimating, "Oh, look, Mitch, see how busy I am. So busy that when you walk into a room, I'm just in there, always something I need to do in another room. Just see how I dash about." For a while he had played a little game with her, a nasty childish game. When she was in the kitchen, then he came to the kitchen saying, "I need a glass of water." After a moment he's standing drinking water, she, like a crystal witch, over the caramel brew bubbling like a prehistoric mud pot on the stove. She said, "Oh, I must light the pumpkins," and she rushed to the living room to make the pumpkins smile with light. He came after her smiling. "I must get my pipe." "Oh, the cider," she had cried, running to the dining room. "I'll check the cider," he had said, but when he tried following, she ran to the bathroom and locked the door. He stood outside the bathroom door, laughing strangely and senselessly, his pipe gone cold in his mouth. And then, tired of the game but stubborn, he waited another 5 minutes. There was not a sound from the bath, and least she enjoyed in any way knowing that he waited outside, irritated. He suddenly jerked about and walked upstairs, whistling merrily. At the top of the stairs he had waited. Finally he had heard the bathroom door unlatch, and she had come out, and life below stairs had resumed. As life in the jungle must resume once a terror has paused on the way, and the antelope return to their spring. Now as he finished his bow tie and put on his dark coat, there was a mouse rustle in the hall. Marian appeared in the door, all skeletonous in her disguise. "How do I look, Papa?" "Ooh, fine." From under the mask, blonde hair showed. From the skull sockets, small blue eyes smiled. He sighed. Marian and Louis, the two silent denouncers, of his virtually, his dark power. What alchemy had there been in Louise that took the dark of the dark man and bleached the dark brown eyes and black hair and washed and bleached the ingrown baby, all during the period before birth until the child was born. Marion, blonde, blue-eyed, and ruddy-cheeked. Sometimes he suspected that Louise had conceived the child as an idea, completely asexual, an immaculate conception of contemptuous mind and self. As a firm rebuke to him, she had produced a child in her own image. And to top it off, she had somehow fixed the doctor so that he shook his head and said, "Sorry, Mr. Wilder, your wife will never have another child. This is the last one." "And I wanted a boy," Mitch had said 8 years ago. He had almost bent to take hold of Marion now in her skull mask. He felt an inexplicable rush of pity for her because she had never had a father's love, only the crushing, holding love of a loveless mother. But most of all, he pitied himself that somehow he had not made the most of a bad birth, enjoyed his daughter for herself, regardless of her not being dark and a son and like him. Somewhere he had missed out. Other things being equal, he would have loved the child, but Louise hadn't wanted a child. In the first place, she had been frightened of the idea of the birth. He had forced the child on her, and from that night, all through the year until the agony of the birth itself, Louise had lived in another part of the house. She had expected to die with the forced child. It had been very easy for Louise to hate this husband, who so wanted a son, that he gave his only wife over to the mortuary. But Louise had lived, and in triumph. Her eyes, the day he came to the hospital, were cold. "I'm alive," they said, "and I have a blonde daughter. Just look." And when he had put his hand to touch her, the mother had turned away to conspire with her new pink daughter-child. Away from that dark forcing murderer. It had been so beautifully ironic. His selfishness deserved it. But now it was October again. There had been other Octobers, and when he thought of the long winter he had been filled with horror. Year after year, to think of the endless months mortared into the house by an insane fall of snow, trapped with a woman and a child, neither of whom loved him. For months on end, during the 8 years, there had been respite. In spring and summer, you got out, walked, picnicked. These were the desperate solutions to the desperate problem of a hated man. But in the winter, the hikes and picnics and escapes fell away with the leaves. Life, like a tree, stood empty, the fruit picked, the sap run to the earth. Yes, you invited people in, but once we were hard to get in the winter with the blizzards and all. Once he had been clever enough to save for a Florida trip. They had gone south. He had walked in the open. But now, the eighth winter coming, he knew things were finally at an end. He simply could not wear this one through. There was an acid walled off in him that slowly had eaten through tissue and bone over the years. And now, tonight, it would reach the wild explosive in him, and it would all be over. There was a mad ringing of a bell below in the hall. Louise went to see. Marian, without a word, ran down to greet the first arrivals. There were shouts and hilarity. He walked to the top of the stairs. Louise was below taking wraps. She was tall and slender and blonde to the point of whiteness, laughing down upon the new children. He hesitated. What was all this? The years, the boredom of living, where had it gone wrong? Certainly not with the birth of the child alone, but it had been a symbol of all their tensions. He imagined his jealousies and his business failures and all the rotten rest of it. Why didn't he just turn, pack a suitcase and leave? No, not without hurting Louise as much as she had hurt him. It was simple as that. Divorce wouldn't hurt her at all. It was simply be an end to a numb indecision. If he thought divorce would give her pleasure in any way, he would stay married the rest of his life to her, for damned spite. No, he must hurt her. Figure some way, perhaps to take Marian away from her legally. Yes, that was it. That would hurt most of all, to take Marian away. Hello down there, he descended the stairs beaming. Louise didn't look up. Hi, Mr. Wilder, the children shouted and waved as he came down. By 10 o'clock, the doorbell had stopped ringing. The apples were bitten from spring doors. The pink child faces were wiped dry from the apple-bobbing napkins, and they were smeared with caramel punch. And he, the husband, with pleasant efficiency, had taken over. He took the party right out of Louisa's hands. He ran about talking to the 20 children and the 12 parents who had come and were happy with the special spiked cider he had fixed them. He supervised pin the tail on the donkey, spin the bottle, musical chairs, and all the rest, amid fits of shouting laughter. Then, in the triangular-eyed pumpkin shine, all house lights out, he cried, "Hush! Follow me!" Tiptoeing towards the cellar, the parents on their periphery of the consumed riot commented to each other, nodding at the clever husband, speaking to the lucky wife. How well he got on with the children, they said. The children crowded after the husband, squealing. "The cellar!" he cried. "The tomb of the witch!" More squealing. He made a mock shiver. "Abandon hope, all ye who enter here." The parents chuckled. One by one, the children slid down the slide, which Mitch had fixed up from old lengths of table section, into the dark cellar. He hissed and shouted ghastly utterances after them. A wonderful wailing filled the dark pumpkin-lighted house. Everybody talked at once, everybody but Marian. She had gone through all the party with a minimum of sound or talk. It was all inside her, all the excitement and the joy. What a little troll, he thought. With a shut mouth and shiny eyes, she had watched her own party like so many serpentines thrown down before her. Now the parents, with laughing reluctance, they slid down the short incline, uproarious, while little Marian stood by, always wanting to see it all, to be last. Louise went down without help. He moved to aid her, but she was gone even before he bent. The upper house was empty, the silence in the candle shine. Marian stood by the slide. "Here we go," he said, and picked her up. They sat in a vast circle in the cellar. Warmth came from the distant bulk of the furnace. The chairs stood in a long line along each wall. 20 squealing children, 12 rustling relatives, alternately spaced with Louise down at the far end, Mitch up at the end near the stairs. He peered but saw nothing. They had all grouped to their chairs. Catch as you can in the blackness. The entire programme from here on was to be enacted in the dark. He as Mr. Interlocutor. There was a child scampering on the smell of damp cement and the sound of the wind out in the October stars. "Now!" cried the husband in the dark cellar. "Quiet!" Everybody settled. The room was as black as night. Not a light, not a shine, not a glint of an eye. A scraping of crockery, a metal rattle. "The witch is dead," I told the husband. "Eee!" said the children. "The witch is dead. She had been killed, and here is the knife she was killed with." He handed over the knife. It was passed from hand to hand, down and around the circle, with chuckles and little odd cries and comments from the adults. "The witch is dead, and this is her head," whispered the husband, and handed an item to the nearest person. "Oh, I know this game is played," some child cried happily in the dark. He gets some old chicken innards from the icebox and hands them around and says, "These are her innards," and he makes a clay head and passes it for her head, and passes a soup bone for her arm, and he takes a marble and says, "This is her eye," and he takes some corn and says, "This is her teeth," and he takes a sack of plum pudding and gives it and says, "This is her stomach." I know how this is played. "Hush! You'll spoil everything," some girl said. "The witch came to harm, and this is her arm," said Mitch. "Eee!" said the children. The items were passed and passed like hot potatoes around the circle. Some children screamed, some wouldn't touch them. Some ran from their chairs to stand in the centre of the cellar until the grisly items had passed. "Oh, it's only chicken inside," scoffed the boy. "Come back, Helen." Shot from hand to hand with small scream after scream, the items went down, down, to be followed by another and another. "The witch cut apart, and this is her heart," said the husband. 6 or 7 items moving all at once through the laughing, trembling dark. Louise spoke up. Marion, don't be afraid, it's only play. Marion didn't say a thing. Marion, asked Louise, are you afraid? Marion didn't speak. She's all right, said the husband. She's not afraid. On and on the passing and the screams and the hilarity. The autumn wind sighed about the house, and he, the husband, stood at the head of the dark cellar, atoning the words, handing out the items. Marion, asked Louise again, from far across the cellar. Marion, called Louise. Everybody quieted. Marion answers. Are you afraid? Marion didn't answer. Marion didn't answer at all. The husband stood there at the bottom of the cellar steps. Louise, called Marion. Marion, are you there? No answer. The room was silent. Where's Marion? Called Louise. She was here, said a boy. Maybe she's upstairs. Marion! No answer. It was quiet. Louise cried out, Marion! Marion! Turn on the light, said one of the adults. The items stopped passing. The children and adults sat with the witch's items in their hands. No, Louise gasped. There was a scraping of her chair, wildly in the dark. No, don't turn on the lights. Oh God, don't turn them on. Please, please don't turn on the lights. Don't! Louise was shrieking now. The entire cellar froze with the scream. What? Nobody moved. Everyone sat in the dark cellar, suspended in the suddenly frozen task of this October game. The wind blew outside, banging the house. The smell of pumpkins and apples filled the room with the smell of the objects in the fingers, while one boy cried, I'll go look upstairs! And he ran upstairs hopefully and out around the house, 4 times around the house, calling, Marion! 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 Over and over, and at last coming slowly downstairs into the waiting, breathing cellar, and saying to the darkness, I can't find her. Then some idiot turned on the lights. Ooh, my darling, I hope you enjoyed that little start to our October evenings. The October game, 1948. I do so hope you've enjoyed it. Well, Halloween will soon be here, my dears. So let's all look forward to October the 1st and 31 Days of Horror. Thank you so much for listening, and I do hope you will join me for more short stories from Ray Bradbury. If you like what I do, you can always give me a thumbs up. And if you really like what I do, you can always subscribe and come back for more adventures as the 31 Days of Horror begin.